who wish to say a word, I will allow, and then we'll throw it open to you, President. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, dear South Africans in particular, dear workers and Cosatu members. I, together with the 7 unions represented here, the Communication Workers Union, NUMSA, FAO, SACAO, SASAO, DINOSA, SAFPO, have been striving for many months to achieve unity and cohesion within Cosatu. So the ongoing implosion of Cosatu now unfolding before our eyes is a serious setback and tragedy, not only for the working class, but for the country as a whole. We have tried to avoid this scenario at all costs, but as the history outlined in my statement at the press conference on Sunday shows, those pursuing the agenda of elite capture of Cosatu inside and outside of the organization will stop at nothing. They have been absolutely ruthless and determined to purge any individual and any organization that stands in their way. They are seemingly oblivious to the disastrous impact that this will have on the working class. In particular, I condemn the decisions of the Cosatu CC taken on the 30 March 2015, which dismissed the General Secretary was democratically elected by the 2012 11th National Congress of Cosatu. Closed the door on the readmission of NUMSA with all of its now 365,000 members, accepted the affiliation of a shelf union with no membership, with no Congress, with not practicing any principle of worker control, issued no notice for the Special National Congress and opposed the court challenge to compel them to convene a Congress. These decisions will have a huge impact on the struggle for a strong United Workers' Federation. The leadership imagine that they can continue with business as usual, which is impossible in a situation in which 365 workers in NUMSA are excluded. This implosion within Cosatu is not just a crisis for the Federation and the working class alone. It reflects a broader crisis in South Africa. The underlying catastrophe of high unemployment, poverty, and inequality is spreading into our dysfunctional healthcare and education systems, crime and corruption. It is endangering organizations of civil society, all democratic mass formations and democratic structures of our constitutional democracy. It is also behind the disarray in many state-owned enterprises, such as the SABC, SAA, SARS, ESCOM, Parliament itself, the SAPS, the intelligence, the NPA, the post office, the ITEP, and the use of rogue elements to write fake intelligence reports condemning those perceived as opponents as imperialist agents. All of the mass formations have been blunted as instruments of popular power. The youth worker axis, which drove popular struggles of the 1970s, 1980s, right through into the 1990s, have been reduced to pale shadow of its former self. With the taming of the youth movement, the women's, the civics, the rural people's movements have to a large extent been co-opted and blunted to such an extent that they no longer have any real impact. The last powerful mass weapon in the hands of the working class is the democratic trade union movement, which is now targeted for co-option to serve the agenda of the powerful interests. While workers thought they were struggling for the soul of the ANC, a hidden agenda was being hatched by forces hostile to the working class to capture the soul of Cosatu itself. This all reflects the drive by a predatory elite to exercise control. Let me repeat this. This all reflects the drive by a predatory elite to exercise control over all areas of society to advance their narrow agenda of accumulation and control. Its unprincipled abuse of power is increasingly infecting all institutions of state, the civil society organizations, and now the trade unions. It is deliberate political game to hollow out all organs of people's power and institutions which are supposed to hold the leadership to account. If we don't combat this abuse of power, it will take us irreversibly towards a failed state and a society in which there is no accountability, run by kleptocracy, driven by a particular brand of predatory and parasitic capitalism. The cancer of corruption is the most extreme expression of this disease. In the latest press conference of Cosatu CC, there were statements made about my person which border on defamation and criminal libel. I am in consultation with my lawyers and my family and progressive leaders of the labor movement to determine how best to deal with this. In particular, I object vehemently to the unprofessional and unethical behavior of the forensic auditors, the Zwelinzima Vavi, who have still to apologize to me and the CC for misleading all into believing that the report submitted to the 10th February 2014 CC was either a draft when talking to me and or a final report when talking to the CC. The CC knowingly decided to adopt the Zwelinzima Vavi report that they are fully aware is flawed. In the process, my rights to a fair process have been denied and prejudiced. I'm further in consultation on whether or not I should challenge my extremely irregular, illegal, and completely unjustified expulsion as the General Secretary of Cosatu. I have no doubt that the dismissal is unfair and illegal. I have been dismissed without a hearing conducted by an independent chairperson. The Cosatu CC, which is populated by a faction which has been paying for my blood since 2012, has acted as investigators, prosecutors, and a judge at the same time, whilst denying me the basic legal right to a fair hearing. I remain firmly convinced that I did nothing wrong, let alone break the law, in the execution of my duties as the Cosatu General Secretary. But the priority now is not to get drawn into a tit-for-tat arguments and exchanging of insults, but to redirect our energy to the class struggle. While this is a very sad day, the working class needs to respond decisively to these challenges. This is why we are saying to the workers, don't mourn, organize. We are going to urgently consult all of our members including holding special National Executive Committee meetings and a joint National Executive Committee meeting of all the unions that are listed in this statement. And many unions as possible will unfold a program of mass mobilization of workers to combat and reverse the situation we are facing. I shall participate fully in this program of mass mobilization and consultation. I'm not a banned person. This is no longer the apartheid state. I'm a free man and free to associate with those that appreciate my contribution in the worker struggle, and somebody else who doesn't like that can go and jump to the nearest pool. We are calling on workers to discuss the implications of our many years of attempts to win back Cosatu as an independent, democratic, and militant and fighting worker-controlled, capable of driving full implementation of the Workers' Parliament mandates. Has the intransigence of a dominant faction driving its agenda transformed Cosatu into a toothless dog and an apologist of the current status quo? That's the question we're going to put in front of our members. Can we still rescue this organization and bring it back firmly in the hands of workers so that it can carry forward the struggles they have been waging now that have been delayed for the past 3 years? Can we still win back Cosatu, or have we reached an end of the road where we should now consider alternatives? That's what we're going to be consulting members from now on. And in fact, we're going to be very busy. Contrary to those who wish that we could be banned, we're going to be very busy. This weekend is full of programs. Next week, we're all over in the Western Cape, as well as in the Free State. And we're going to be everywhere in the country to ask the members this question, because we now think that fundamental question can no longer be postponed. Thank you very much for your presence and for your interest in the press conference we convened today.
Thank you very much, Comrade Vavi. Did any of the other representatives from the affiliates like to add a few words? And I think there are one or two others who came in who should really be up here. No? In that case, I will throw it open. I'll have to move slightly because I can't see much of it. Right, number one, I'll take you with 3. Number 2, Agri, number 3. Okay.
What is your answer to the question that you posed? Can you still win that Cosatu? Do you think that you can still win that Cosatu? And 2, what is your position regarding the possible formation of an alternative federation to Cosatu? It looks like it's spoken on this on the human rights of the past. What is your position on the formation of a federation to be led by yourself?
Okay.
Thanks, Patrick. Amy Musgrave, Independent Media. I have 2 questions, please. The one is, really, I'd like to know what you're going to do about the border report. You've often said that there are many mistakes in it, and in fact, some of it is just blatant lies. So I'd like to know what you're going to do that. Would you consider going to court to clear your name? And then what I'd like to know is, can you actually afford another court case? Because obviously, when you had to get your suspension reinstated, I mean, you guys spent a lot of money on that case. Thanks.
Jan Alone from Media 24. I'd just like to know, you are outside of Cosatu, you really yourself, and not just outside of Cosatu. How are you going to get access to the Special National Congress? Are you actually trying to get access to the special national congress that's being held in July? Will it be the legal route, or are there any alternative routes to get access to get into that?
Okay, thank you.
Let me start by answering the last question of Jan, the veteran. I didn't even see where you seated, but I know your voice. Okay. Yes, Jan, thank you very much for asking that question. We are effectively out of Cosatu now. The General Secretary elected by workers unanimously in the last Congress have been booted out through a vote involving about 31 leaders of the affiliates of the Federation, to the exclusion of all of the people that are here who maintain their suspension of their participation in the Cosatu Central Executive Committee. NUMSA, with all of its 340,000 at the time when it was booted out, now 365,000 members have been booted out. The message being communicated to the country is that they too will not be allowed to participate in the Special National Congress that they convened. And the point that we're making in relation to that question is that any Congress that is going to exclude any component of Cosatu is going to be a farce. And it will be a tragedy for any one of us to attend such a conference where other components of Cosatu are excluded. So a Congress in the current circumstances, excluding the biggest union in the Federation, will not be attended by me and will not be attended by any of the Cosatu unions that actually called for that Congress to be convened, because it is going to be a farce. It's going to be a betrayal of the very same call that have been made by those unions. So no, we will not attend a Congress if it is excluding NUMSA. By the way, we must say that the NUMSA General Secretary is going to sign the affidavit so that the papers in relation to the challenge of the Cosatu's refusal to convene a special national congress is launched. As you can see, we are up to this moment doing everything that we can to try and save the unity of the Federation. We're going into court, spending loads and loads of hard-earned worker subscriptions in order to ensure that there is democracy in the organization. We have done and we're doing everything that we can to ensure that we don't arrive at a conclusion that may just arise in response to the last point of our statement. We're still fighting. We're still fighting because we are absolutely very certain that the reason why the other guys don't want a Congress is that they know they are not acting in the mandate and in the best interest of their own members. They fear their own members who will certainly revolt in any ballot paper, secret ballot in particular, against the shenanigans that have been employed for so long that are risking now the implosion of the movement they love, that they have built for so long. So you're asking me a question about whether we're going to go to court on the Gobodo thing. These court things, by the way, the whole justice in South Africa is for the rich. Yeah. And there are so many times I've considered taking Gobodo last year already to court over the fact that they tell me that they're presenting a draft report subject to further investigation, and yet to Cosatu CEC they say this is a final report and it's final, meaning that Cosatu is now free to act, and indeed Cosatu began to act. It extended the terms of reference to go and do a search as to whether all the service providers in Cosatu were terminated correctly, because there is an assumption that I am conflicted and that Yes. I was saying that there is an assumption and an inference that my wife is in conflict of interest and therefore I'm in conflict of interest over something that Gobodo didn't even check. I'm supposed to be guilty of contravening a Cosatu policy that does not exist, and so forth and so forth. So we consulting leaders, and one of the questions is it worth it? But some advice we're getting is unless we can get a court order declaring that that Gobodo report is done with intention of injuring our reputation, a lot of people in the country, the media included, will continue to run with the stories and the headlines or lines in their story that says that Cosatu General Secretary is facing allegations of corruption. Begin Jali, the Deputy General Secretary of Cosatu, yesterday even had an audacity to say that there are fraud allegations I'm facing. He knows that there's no such a thing in the report, but he is relying on the fact that South Africa generally is not a reading nation. The 24-page that I put on the media on the 24th have not been read by every member of the media or even cared to understand. We are a nation of headlines. Once a headline is drawn, people then come and make conclusions on the basis of that. So that report is exceedingly damaging. And even if, by the way, I put it in the Facebook, I have about 240,000 people following me there, I know a small fraction of them will read it. Because unfortunately, we're not a reading nation. In these 54 million citizens in the country, if you write a book, you will not get more than 5,000 people buying that book. It's a tragedy of South African situation. But then people get condemned, you know. The information is there in the media. I put it up and it shows blow by blow that this report is wrong, is full of flaws, is ineffectual, and it is done with malicious intent. But then, I have to repeat that every time to avoid some of the media writing, Vavi facing allegations of corruption and misdemeanor and so forth and so forth. That's quite unfortunate. Secondly, you're asking a question, can we afford to go back to court and challenge this dismissal? And let me tell you this, I've been the unionist all my life, now over 3 decades. I know when a decision is unfair. You can't dismiss a person you have a contractual agreement with without a hearing in South Africa in 2015. And the hearing we know must be conducted by an independent chairperson. You can't appoint yourself as an investigator, a prosecutor, and a judge at the same time, which is what then the CC became on the 30th and the 31st. It is wrong, it is unfair. No CCMA commissioner, no labor court, no high court will ever agree that in South Africa in 2015, we must now roll back the clock to the 1940s. Do I have money to keep running up and down in courts? Because I don't think that that's what we are dealing with. We're not dealing with people who don't know that they are acting wrongly. We're dealing with people who have taken a political decision to prosecute a political opponent. Do you resolve that in the courts? I don't think so. And that's why we're asking an overall question. With all of the 4 things that we were fearing will not happen, we were battling and we were saying to everybody in the public, and sometimes we appeared stupid, that we want one NUMSA to go back in the federation because the only basis of unity of all Cosatu members will be when all the Cosatu unions are in the same roof trying to find solutions to the crisis. That door is now shut. We are now being told that NUMSA must appeal. Even the court challenge that NUMSA is initiating is being blocked, and Cosatu is opposing that. The General Secretary of Cosatu, which is the second point, is now being dismissed unfairly and illegally, without a mandate, we must add, from members, above their head and behind them. The leadership have an audacity to reverse what they lost in the previous Congress. Thirdly, a shell union, as we call it, called Limusa, a union that hardly exists anywhere, have now been affiliated in the Federation.
The second position that we took as SACAU was that there is no expulsion of the General Secretary. We fought against the suspension of the General Secretary, and I think our position to defend the General Secretary has not changed, and it will never change. Moreover, that the dismissal was a flaw. How on earth do you dismiss somebody with a contractual obligation in a meeting? I have never seen a disciplinary hearing that is conducted in a meeting. And moreover, that the same Central Executive Committee of Cosatu established what is called disciplinary hearing. And the General Secretary was not subjected to that structure. That structure was supposed to sit, and today you can even ask him, there are no charges laid against him. In a normal circumstances of disciplinary procedures, somebody must be told about the charges and what are the charges, and there must be a verdict, and after the verdict there must be a sanction. Now the group of 31 sat around the table thinking that they are representing 2 million members of Cosatu, and decided on the fate of the General Secretary, who was democratically elected by members at the National Congress, and decide that he must be expelled. Hence, we believe that the position of SACAU to defend the General Secretary is not going to stop here. It will be a matter that we are going to take further in our National Executive Committee, and we'll see and hear from members what is their position in the current state of affairs. Thank
you. I sit here representing SASAU. SASAU's resolution still stands with regards to hands off Zwelinzima Vavi, hands off NUMSA. And our suspension in the CEC still stands, as we believe that the CEC is not a platform where you can engage. It's a platform where comrades vote because they have a specific political agenda to deal with those they differ with ideologically as to where they are taking Cosatu. I think my comrades have covered a lot of points. I just want to piggyback on the issue of the second deputy president. As SASA, we have been very clear that all these meetings that have dismissed NUMSA, have dismissed Zwelinzima Vavi, you are having a second deputy president of Cosatu that constitutionally should not be sitting there. Where have you seen a shop steward resigning from their workplace within 24 hours, joining another union and becoming a shop steward automatically? It does not happen. It just shows you the disregard of the Cosatu Constitution by the leaders that are presiding over Cosatu in pursuance of a political agenda. We are taking the dismissal of Zwelinzima Vavi and the current developments within the labor movement to our members, as has been articulated in the statement, for our members to give us a mandate. Because as a union, we operate on the basis of a mandate. Thank you.
This press conference is over.
Including the maximum.
No, Yolisa must answer, must ask a question.
Yeah, I understand, but I think it's television. There's a couple of questions. Mr. Vavi, you're saying you are in consultations with weather authorities to challenge your extremely irregular, illegal, and completely unjustified expulsion. Now, on Sunday, though, you dared them to fire you. So, what were you really expecting them to do in that case? Why do you even bother, even considering consulting in the first place? And to the other unions, I understand your mandate as you received from the workers. But yesterday, Cosatu CEC was very clear, and they said any affiliates and members for that matter should desist from following or being part of Vavi-led activity. This is clearly a Vavi-led activity. And so why are you here? Are you giving the middle finger to Cosatu? Are you also defying them and saying, I'm daring you to expel us as well? Thank you. Oh, and that goes for the national spokesperson of Cosatu. Are you still the spokesperson of Cosatu? Or are you also daring Cosatu to fire?
I'll ask Patrick to answer for himself, But let me just again explain this daring of Cosatu. What I communicated on Sunday that I still firmly believing in, and I'm not going to withdraw it, because today is cloudy or sunshine or raining or storms. The points I was raising were only two. The first point I'm saying, and I will say this until I die, no one can claim to be unifying workers when you are pursuing a purge of those who disagree with inside the organization. The dismissal of NUMSA is both unfair but also suicidal politically. Let me correct you, my Deputy President of SACAO. They were not dismissed only for the extension of scope. NUMSA is asked as early as in February 2014 to explain why it cannot be dismissed. 5 reasons are presented. Tell us why you can't be dismissed. Here are the allegations, supposedly. The first allegation or statement says your Congress decided that workers, NUMSA should not campaign for the ANC. That's a political decision it took, NUMSA. That's a primary reason why they are out of Cosatu now. It's a political difference. Which union have ever organized workers on the basis of political ideology? Workers are not coming to the unions for their political issues. They learned that here. The second reason was you threatened not to pay affiliation fees. But they have not carried out that. Thirdly, you threatened not to pay political fee. And yet they were one of the unions that were updated. The people who are accusing them were way behind in terms of their own dues to the political fee. 4, you threatened to march to Cosatu. At that time, there was no march to Cosatu. Number 5 only, you extended your scope. But now both in relation to the question of the scope, again, the problem of the unwritten republic. I put up the document, and I'm going to do that again and hope that the media can read in my Facebook, which shows the history of the extension of scopes by all the unions of Cosatu, or most of the unions of Cosatu, not all, correction. Not one of them have ever been expelled These guys were in that CC. They say, but we have been the victims of the extension of scope by Satau, by Saktu, by FAU, by everybody. FAU in the meeting says, but we extended our scope. Why are you not dismissing us? But NUMSA must be dismissed. In relation to the first of not voting for the ANC, SAMU took the same resolution in 2011 when they were heartful about the Systems Act. Systems Bill then became an act that they said we're not voting for the ANC in this 2011 election. Who threatened them with a vote, with a dismissal? No one. It's the most inconsistent form of action which is driven again, not by the desire to get NUMSA to correct whatever policies that may not be consistent with the Cosatu policy. The purge is decided elsewhere. NUMSA must be out of the federation, Zwelinzima Vavi out of the federation, and those who agree with them out of the federation. We want to dismantle this federation in order to build a new one. This is what has been pursued, and this is what is happening, unfortunately. Here's another fellow who out, and many others, 139 provincial chairpersons and secretaries, regional chairpersons and secretaries of SAMU, shop stewards everywhere, 139, no hearing out in pursuance of the same goal. Those who agree and or have an inclination to agree out of the federation. We are dismantling it. People say that in public in order to build a new one. This is the new one they want. But it's going to be a different new one indeed. We're asking them, what are you saying about the 250 million spent on Inkandla? They will have to tell you to ask the next question. You ask them, what is your position about the government signing a memorandum of understanding with the Russians, which is clearly so flawed and which is already defining that the Russians are destined to win that nuclear contract. You're going to ask them that, they can't give you a question, because these are the issues. This is the broader political problem that I'm referring to. That's a broader political problem that I'm referring to. And so I will not go to a meeting which is about pursuing those who disagree with. Secondly, I said, if you want a solution to the crisis, bring everybody in. Bring NUMSA inside the house. Find solutions with everybody. Don't say we're continuing and all we're going to do is to lobby individuals. And that's what happened to the president of this union. We lobby individuals, and once the individual comes and they want to be here, then we'll call a press conference and think that that's a member's voice. So that's what has been happening. And the other question is not meant for me. It's meant for Patrick and
Okay. Just before,
there's Evan Edgen.
yes, will the owners of the following cars of the Luton, your colleagues have jumped in, CL20XG, EP, Northwest, EK54WZGP, CM71YSGP.
Broadcasting line.
Answer the questions, Kobe.
Well, to answer the question that Yoliso has raised, firstly, we haven't received yet a correspondence from Cosatu officially telling us not to have anything to do with Zwelinzima Vavi. But should that correspondence reach our offices, we will respond. And our response will be very clear that there is a standing decision of FAU on hands-off Zwelinzima Vavi. And until that decision by FAU's NEC is changed, we will stick to that decision. So we will not respect the decree or the instruction that has been issued via the media.
I think first of all, as Sakau, we never affiliated to Cosatu via the media. That must be clear. And we cannot instructed by the media that we cannot have anything to do with Zwelinzima Vavi. And I think the GS of FAO is correct. For us defending both NUMSA and Zwelinzima Vavi, we were mandated by our executive structures. Therefore, they will be the only one that changes that. But furthermore, we spoke about, I think the GS of FAO earlier on spoke about, nevertheless, that we are affiliated to Cosatu, but we've got our own independent constitution talking about autonomous of individual affiliate, whereby we cannot instructed to exercise our democratic rights to whom we associate with and to whom we don't want to associate with. Thank you.
Yes, the simple answer to the question is I'm no longer employed by Cosatu. I submitted my resignation yesterday. What brought the issue to a head, I think, was the press conference yesterday, when my role, if I was still employed, would be to talk to you and justify the decisions that had just been taken, which I felt I could not do because I would be defending the indefensible. I disagreed with those decisions, and I agree with everything in the statement that's been issued today, and I don't need to elaborate on that. But perhaps it's worth mentioning that even if I had not done so, and when this morning I was still employed by Cosatu, by now I could well be not employed, because one of the most outrageous decisions, which you would have seen in the statement issued yesterday, that merely to attend an event at which Zwelinzima Vavi is present is a disciplinary offence. And I believe that nobody could possibly continue in an organisation that has rules like that, which basically destroy freedom of speech. But I must stress that I haven't in any way changed my fundamental views. Just like the General Secretary, I still stand firmly by all the principles and policies of Cosatu, and will continue in whatever capacity to continue to fight with the workers in defence of those policies and principles. Thank you.
I suspect many Cosatu staff members will, in their own time, begin to speak like that. We're done, guys. No.
Last question.
No.
Last question.
Really, it's for the unions, please.
Can we just take one very quick round?
Yeah.
Because you've had your hand up a long time.